Hello everyone, thanks again for joining us this Friday for our 7th webinar series. Today we're going to hear from Dr. Katie Grafe. Katie attained her bachelor's degree microbiology honors magna cum laude from the University of Washington. She completed her PhD in virology from the University of Oxford through the NIH Oxford-Cambridge Scholars Program. Her graduate studies examined host pathogen interactions of influenza viruses. Following her graduate work, she became a postdoctoral research fellow at the Rocky Mountain Laboratories in Montana, where she studied tick-borne flaviviruses. Katie taught an undergraduate microbiology course and mentored numerous lab students during her undergraduate and graduate studies. Welcome, Dr. Grafe.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, and a special thanks to the organizers, Falake and Lynn, for organizing these webinar series. I've really enjoyed the different sessions that I've been able to attend, and thank you very much for inviting me to present. So today I'll just be introducing a program that we launched about a year ago called the African Access Initiative, as well as its sub-program called the African Consortium for Cancer Clinical Trials, or AC3T. So briefly, to introduce the organization that I work for, BioVentures for Global Health. We're a nonprofit organization based in Seattle, Washington. The goal is to establish collaborations and programs that engage the for-profit industry in global health. And so we really connect different groups with different companies and different organizations to share resources and ideas to advance global health issues. We work across 3 core areas, and I'll be talking primarily about the African Access Initiative, which you see up on the upper left-hand side here, wherein we're really expanding access to cancer medicines and technologies in Africa. Our other 2 programs focus on accelerating research and development for poverty-related diseases, and this is through a joint collaboration with the World Intellectual Property Organization, and is a program called WIPO Research. We also are building biomedical research and development capacity in low and middle income countries through both fellowship and equipment donation programs, as well as a program we've run for the last couple of years called the Africa Pavilion, which takes place at the annual Bio International Convention, which is a convening of biotechnology, pharmaceutical, diagnostic, life science companies for partnering opportunities. But today, as I said, I'll focus on our program focusing on cancer in Africa. Again, BVGH works across sectors to engage different groups and different organizations to solve global health issues. And I won't spend a lot of time here because through the past webinars, the speakers have done a really great job of highlighting what the cancer crisis is in Africa. But just to point out that cancer is a serious problem on the continent. Our studies have indicated that cancer is deadlier than malaria based off of statistics and information that we're getting from the WHO and other sources, that 60% more Africans die from cancer than from malaria. And recognizing that there is this really huge challenge of cancer in Africa, it's further compounded by the fact that the cancer patients in Africa really face a lot of treatment barriers. A lot of countries have limited to no access to cancer therapies, and those countries that do have access often are unable to afford the medicines, or the patients are unable to afford the medicines. They have poor diagnostic capacity, so they're not able to quickly and accurately diagnose cancer patients. And once these patients are diagnosed, there's a shortage of trained oncologists that treat the patients. And then importantly, there's been minimal research and clinical trials conducted on the African continent to really examine the safety and efficacy of cancer medicines within populations found in Africa. So to really address these three barriers, BVGH launched the African Access Initiative back in June 2017. And the goal of AAI is to really engage, again, bio and pharmaceutical companies, governments, nonprofit and academic organizations, as well as healthcare leaders to support and address the problem of cancer on the African continent. And we're really focusing on three core areas. One is to support affordable access to innovative technologies and medicines, strengthen the healthcare, as well as build capacity to treat and manage cancer patients in Africa. As I mentioned, access and accelerating access to innovative medicines is a core goal of AAI. And what we're doing here is we are conducting a comprehensive needs assessment of hospitals that we're working with across the African continent to really define what the cancer priorities are in those individual hospitals. Importantly, we're asking what cancers are most prevalent at their hospital and what drugs they most need access to. Once we have this list of priority drugs in hand, we're also working with the ministries of health in that hospital's respective country to identify what are the priority medicines at the Ministry of Health level. With this information combined, we're then going to the that actually manufacture these medicines, and these companies were focusing primarily on the innovative pharmaceutical companies, as well as some pharmaceutical company, generic companies of good standing. We'll bring these groups together to start to develop and come to an agreement around pricing that will make these medicines affordable to the cancer patients. And once we've set the appropriate cost, then we'll establish agreements and help coordinate the access to these medicines. With regards to strengthening healthcare infrastructure, we're really focused at the hospital level in helping the hospital be able to diagnose and treat patients that they are seeing. And so we're doing this through both affordable access agreements for laboratory as well as radiology equipment, but also coordinating donations of gently used high-value equipment. We're also providing software and technical training that may be needed to adequately and properly use, troubleshoot, and maintain the equipment that these hospitals are receiving. Now that we have drugs in hand and we have the equipment in hand, we also recognize that building up the capacity within the hospitals is critically important, not only on how to use the equipment that we've placed, but also the variety of other skills that are needed in order to appropriately manage cancer patients across the spectrum of care. And so through our connections with cancer experts and training opportunities, coordinating fellowships and workshops that really hone in to fill the gaps that we've identified at the variety of hospitals we're working in. And these can span everything from clinical trials management to oncology surgery to oncology nursing, or just a general update on oncology or clinical oncology best practices. And again, all of this is really driven by what the hospitals have identified as their core gaps or needs. And lastly, we recognize that clinical trials not only are a really necessary component of treating cancer patients in Africa, our hospitals have really highlighted that this is an area that they are really focused on and they are interested in conducting clinical trials. And so in November of 2017, we launched the African Cancer Clinical Trials, which is a subset program within AAI. And through AC3T, we will be implementing cancer clinical trials at cancer hospitals in Africa, while also building clinical trials capacity and experience. And I'll talk more about this in a moment. And so, as I said, we launched AAI about a year ago, and we focused on 5 countries in Africa. And these are Cameroon, Cote d'Ivoire, Kenya, Nigeria, and Rwanda. And we selected these 5 countries because we have good relationships with their ministries of health, which is critically important to this program. We want to be very transparent, and we also want this program to be driven by the countries. We're not coming into a country and telling them what we think they need with regards to drugs or capacity building. We're going into that country, finding out what their priorities are, finding out what their gaps are, and then helping them to fill those gaps. These countries not only have national cancer control plans in place, but they're prioritizing cancer as a severe public health problem. And again, this is critically important to ensure that we have buy-in and support from the top down. And lastly, all of these countries have cancer hospitals that are treating cancer patients right now. Once we've selected these 5 countries, we have memoranda of understanding in place with the different ministries of health. And those ministries of health have then selected between 2 and 16 hospitals across the country that are participating in AAI. Once we have the hospital selected, we've established letters of intent, wherein it just defines what we expect of the hospital and what they can expect of us. As part of this program of understanding really what the need and the landscape is like in a particular country, we are conducting country healthcare landscape reports. And this is really to help us understand what the healthcare landscape is like, including the cancer burden, but also the national cancer priorities, what the regulatory structure is, because if we want to get drugs into the country, we need to know how drugs are registered in the country. Also what the market access and payer system is, so understanding what sort of insurance schemes are in place, but also what the supply chain is like, where we need to build relationships and support the government, so that again, once we develop these access agreements for cancer medicines, it's a smooth process to then get them to the cancer patients. Furthermore, we're also conducting comprehensive needs assessments in each of the hospitals that have been selected to participate in AAI. And this really drives down into what are the particular gaps and needs and priorities of each of the individual hospitals that we're working in. And so this needs assessment really covers everything from the number of cancer patients that are diagnosed and treated at a hospital each year, what the diagnostic capacities and infrastructure the hospital has, and this includes everything from what sort of tests they're able to perform in the diagnostic laboratory, but also the equipment that they have or need. We also look at what the hospital's experience with cancer research as well as clinical trials is, and importantly, what their interests in clinical trials are. We then ask what sort of human resources capacity or gaps they have, so this again can help inform our fellowships and workshops and training opportunities. And lastly, we have about a 15-page checklist wherein we ask the hospital to note which oncology medicines they need, use and need more of, including how many doses they need and what they currently charge or pay for those medicines. And with all this information in hand, we're really able to implement our program. We have this information in hand. That's where we're working with pharmaceutical companies as well as our oncology experts within academic partner organizations to establish programs that really leverage these partners' capabilities, assets, and expertise to fill the priority gaps that have been identified by the comprehensive needs assessment. And as of right now, we're working with 2 companies, and these are Takeda and Pfizer, that are founding partners of AAI. We're also partnering with the African Organization for Research and Training in Cancer, or AORTIC, and the IFPMA Access Accelerated Program. As I mentioned, we're also partnered with each of the ministries of health of the 5 countries that we're working in. And we currently have 32 hospitals that are participating in AAI through each of these hospitals, but I just wanted to list the different hospitals that we're working in across these 5 countries. And as you can expect, with Nigeria being the largest country in Africa, it has the most hospitals that we're working with. Now, to switch bases a little bit, as I mentioned, in November of last year, we launched the African Consortium for Cancer Clinical Trials to address the interest and the overwhelming request by our hospitals to be able to conduct cancer clinical trials at their sites. And so through AC3T, we're really envisioning clinical trials as a way to support and increase access to cancer treatments in Africa. We see this not only as a way to increase access to cancer medicines and technologies, but also to address the data gap that we recognize is really important. African ethnicities tend to be highly underrepresented when clinical trials are being conducted, and we want to ensure that this is rectified through AC3T. And we realize that clinical trials capacity is not consistent and equal across the African continent, and so we also want to do what we can to build clinical trials capacity within the hospitals we're working in. And just to again reiterate that building clinical trials capacity has been prioritized by both the hospitals and the government, and we really want to use clinical trials as a way to provide access to cancer care. We're taking a 3-pronged approach to AC3T to really drive down and support clinical trials capacity as well as clinical trial implementation. We will be conducting again a needs assessment to understand at the hospital level how ready they are to conduct clinical trials. And so we're defining hospitals that can conduct clinical trials that have all the capacity in place as ready now, and those that might need additional training as ready soon. At the Ready Now sites, we will be developing a study pool from which these hospitals can apply for funding to conduct clinical trials on current standards of care within that hospital. The Ready Soon sites will help them to identify the specific gaps that they need to fill in order to become Ready Now, and will then develop programs and fellowships to fill those gaps. This information combined, we will be using to populate an online profile for each hospital that really showcases a particular capacity for clinical trials, the populations that they're serving, as well as any past experience they have. And the goal of this online profile is to really encourage pharmaceutical companies to consider conducting their phase 3 clinical trials on innovative new drugs at these hospitals. And that way we're also accelerating access to the new and innovative medicines that are coming out of pharmaceutical companies. And so, as I mentioned, we're really defining the capabilities and the capacities of our sites to really be able to define which are ready now and which are ready soon. And we'll be using to populate profiles. We're also working with our AC3T steering committee to open a request for interest in conducting clinical trials. And with this in hand, we'll be soliciting information about hospitals' interest in clinical trials, and using that information to reach out to donor organizations to solicit funding, which will be added to the AC3T study pool that I mentioned. In parallel, we'll also be building capacity in the hospitals that have identified gaps in clinical trials, and then we'll be encouraging companies to use and review the online hospital profiles that we are developing. And just briefly, we're again, similarly to AAI, we're working with governments to help provide guidance on, again, what the priorities relating to clinical trials are of their own country, as well as to coordinate efficient review and processing of clinical trials documentation. We're working with cancer leaders that can partner with African primary investigators to help ensure that they're really moving from the ready soon to ready now sites, as well as to provide a level of support when actually conducting clinical trials. We're again leveraging both the capacity as well as the assets of pharmaceutical companies to help support the hospitals we're working in as well. As I mentioned, we have a steering committee that is providing guidance and support on the overall structure as well as implementation of AC3T. And then my organization, BVGH, is acting as the program manager for AC3T as well as AAI. And as I mentioned, we launched AAI a year ago and AC3T back in November of 2017. And so we've since implemented our clinical trials as well as our broader needs assessment summaries, and have started to implement programs to actually move the bar forward with these two programs. So as I mentioned, we have 32 hospitals that are currently participating in AAI, and 21 of these hospitals have completed their needs assessments. And just a high-level overview of the type of information we're getting across these 21 hospitals. There's about 21,000 cancer patients that are diagnosed annually. And as you would expect, breast, cervical, prostate, lymphoma, liver, colorectal cancers are the most commonly diagnosed cancers in adults. And interestingly, about 63% of patients diagnosed within these hospitals are treated. And for our survey purposes, treatment could be cancer medicines, but it could also just be treatment via surgery. Looking at the clinical trials capacity as well as the clinical oncology capacity that's needed, it's really varied and across the board. Different hospitals have different capacities, as you would expect, and different needs. But hematopathology and just general advanced diagnostic pathology is constantly and consistently recognized as a gap. Clinical trials, as I said, are a key component and a key interest of hospitals. But hospitals are also identifying that they need oncology pharmacy training or better oncology training of their general surgeons, oncology nursing, as well as palliative care and radiology and radiotherapy. Within the diagnostic laboratory equipment needs, again, is really across the spectrum. Some hospitals are very well set up and have all of the general pathology equipment and just need access to other technologies that can help them advance their diagnostic pathology capabilities. But other hospitals are just setting up their pathology laboratories and need more equipment such as fume hoods, centrifuges, incubators, microscopes to properly diagnose cancer patients. And as I mentioned, our AC3T checklist really delves into the specific needs and capabilities of a hospital to ensure that that hospital can conduct and implement clinical trials in a rigorous manner. And so we take the information that we get from our AAI needs assessment and expand upon that to really ask, do they have a research ethics committee board, and who's on that board? Do they have any past experience conducting research with partners? And is this research clinical trial or basic research? What sort of financial mechanisms they have in place, what sort of security mechanisms they have in place, as well as general clinical trials, management capabilities, everything from epidemiology, biostatistics, clinical trial assurance, and management capabilities. And just looking at the information that we've received thus far, again, similarly to what we're seeing with the AAI hospital needs assessment, the clinical trials capacity really varies across hospitals, but the consistent thing that we're really seeing is that clinical trials are needed and are wanted. We also have hospitals that have already conducted or are conducting cancer clinical trials, and I won't go through these, but these are just some of the examples of the clinical trials that our hospitals are already conducting or have conducted in the past. And these are specifically interventional studies using cancer medicines. So from this, we can see that A, these hospitals have the ability to and have access to cancer medicines, and they have protocols in place, and B, they have the capacity to conduct clinical trials. And so with these groups, we really want to profile their capabilities and their expertise and showcase that to pharmaceutical companies to encourage those companies to conduct their innovative clinical trials at these sites. We also have hospitals that are planning clinical trials as well, and again, a lot of these are focused on conducting clinical trials on standards of care to again evaluate protocols in their patient populations. And then, as I said, clinical trials are a really strong interest across our hospitals, and some of our hospitals have already defined the clinical trials that they deem as necessary within their patient populations. And with all this information in hand, we've started to implement different fellowships and workshops and capacity building to really start to identify and fill gaps that we've identified through the needs assessment. And this is across the board to really help build capacity to conduct clinical trials. We recognize that clinical trials can't just be conducted in a vacuum, that you need to have the proper capacity to diagnose and treat a patient. And that is really a core component of conducting clinical trials. So we were really implementing different capacity building and different programs across the board to help AAI, but also AC3T, and thus helping our hospitals treat patients both of clinical trials, but inside clinical trials as well. And so we've launched a 3-month clinical trials fellowship with Merck & Co. Inc., or MSD, wherein we're placing 3 clinical trials fellows at the Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital in Kenya. And they'll be spending 3 months really filling the gaps that the hospital identified that they need filled in order to conduct clinical trials. We're also working with MSD to place 3 diagnostic pathology laboratory fellows at the Kigali University Teaching Hospital in Rwanda. And similarly to the program in Kenya, these fellows will be spending 3 months working alongside the pathology laboratory at the teaching hospital to support their capacity, as well as developing SOPs to help build a more rigorous and structured pathology laboratory. And again, all of this was put into place based off of the gaps and the priorities that were identified by the AAI needs assessment. We've also donated or coordinated the donation of laboratory equipment that was donated by Pfizer at the Federal Medical Center in Nigeria. And these pieces of equipment were identified by the hospital as equipment they needed to either diagnose patients or, in the case of the mass spectrometer, to conduct research. Beyond that, we have several different activities that are in process to really, again, fill the gaps that we're identifying through our needs assessment. And this includes conducting diagnostic pathology workshops, radiotherapy and radiology workshops, oncology nursing certification, as well as fellowships, tumor boards, prostate cancer research, as well as breast cancer pathology and biopsy training research. And the whole goal here is to really fill the gaps and the needs that are identified by the hospitals to then help them be able to treat patients in the most efficient and effective way possible. So with that, I will stop to take any questions, but I will say that if you're interested in keeping informed about our programs, I would encourage you to email me, and I'd be happy to add you to our newsletter distribution list. And we send out newsletters quarterly, and then if we have any special news, we send that out as needed. So thank you very much, and I look for any questions you might have.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gray. We'll now open up for questions. So if anyone has any questions, make sure you unmute your mic and go ahead.
I can start, Katie. First of all, I wanted to absolutely thank you for this presentation. I've kind of been looking forward to it, so I made sure that I did everything that I needed to do to clear my calendar to listen to your presentation. Thank you so much for all what BVG is actually doing in Africa. This is outstanding. I don't know how else to put it. You know, a lot of people have been trying to do this for a long time. I'm so proud of your organization to just kind of jump in the middle of things and keep things going. So I have a few questions, but let me start with two questions. First of all, as you are aware, a lot of people will be interested in being part of what you're doing. And I know that it is very important to focus to be able to be very successful. So my question focuses on, for those hospitals that are currently not under what your program that your program is working on, can they use some of your resources to at least be able to start moving forward? So, for example, the instrument that you use to examine readiness of your institutions, would it be available for them to be able to do the same thing? And they may decide maybe we will look for resources to start moving forward until maybe BVG is ready to include us. Or if there's any training program that you have, or if there's any other resources that can be leveraged, can these hospitals, can these institutions in Africa, can they get to this? And if they can, how can they get to this? And how can they tap into at least these great things that you're doing? So let me see you respond to that, and then I'll follow up.
Okay, great. And thank you very much, Falake. I really enjoyed this opportunity to speak with everyone. And yeah, I really appreciate the work that you're doing as well. So I should back up and say that with AAI, we are focusing on those 5 countries, but with AC3T, that we are opening up that more broadly across sub-Saharan Africa. And so when we successfully have the AC3T funding pool funded, that will be open more broadly than just the 32 across the 5 countries we're working in. We have started to work with a
the liver.
to actually take our AC3T checklist and share that with other groups outside of our AAI network that want to conduct clinical trials and want to assess their readiness. And we've developed a separate AC3T checklist that is specifically for hospitals that haven't already conducted the broader AAI needs assessment. And so that checklist is much more in-depth than the regular AC3T checklist. So we can definitely discuss how we can share that around, and the goal would really be to share the information that we might get out of that, because again, with the online profile project that we have through AC3T, we're not just focused on profiling the capabilities of our 32 hospitals excuse me, participating in AAI. We wanted to make that an online profile that can really capture any hospital that is interested in conducting clinical trials, so that companies can really go in and select the sites that fit them most. With regards to the actual taking advantage of the fellowships and the programs that we're participating in or implementing to fill gaps, the fellowships might be a little harder because these are very targeted towards a specific organization or specific hospital. But we are working with different groups to create job opportunities that will of course be taking place within one of our AAI countries. But I think if groups are interested in taking part in those, as space allows, we definitely would encourage groups to, reach out to us. And so I would say to know which workshops and programs we have going on, staying informed either by going to our website or signing up for our newsletters or following us on Twitter. We are pretty active there. Will be a good way to know when there are workshops or other programs wherein sites or hospitals outside of the 5 countries we're working in can take advantage.
Yeah, that's really very good. As you're talking about the training, so for example, I know that Delva Shamley at the University of Cape Town is looking at, has submitted a letter of intent to NCI, because NCI just came out with this training program to actually do a 2-phase training in the area of clinical trials, do a didactic curriculum in November, and then do an intensive 2 to 3 experiential training at the University of Cape Town in the spring of 2019, because they really have I'm not sure whether you've seen their facility at University of Cape Town. They have an outstanding facility and they're doing a lot of clinical trials. So I think it would be great if she touches base with you, especially as she writes that grant to the National Cancer Institute and leverage, some of those resources. So I'll introduce you to Delva via email. But I wanted to also ask another question, and then I'm going to defer to have question. I think one of the challenges that we have seen with respect to clinical trials in Africa, which sort of baffles me, not only in Africa but also in the Caribbean as well, is when typically what tends to happen is that if you're bringing a new drug to a company, you are required to do clinical trials, because you really want to make sure that those therapies are really able to be very successful in that particular population. As you know, therapies in the area of precision medicine and in the area of pharmacogenomics, those therapies have to be tailored to the populations that you have. But this is not the case in Africa. I mean, the drugs are coming in and the drugs are getting dumped, and there's no trials being done to make sure that they are going to really be okay within those populations. So you do have a lot of times some of these therapies fail, and people are kind of throwing up their hands and wondering why are these therapies failing, right? one of the things that I like about your organization is you are really leveraging partnership with the Ministry of Health. So is your organization focused on the areas of policy as well? Looking at, interacting with the equivalents of the FDA in the USA to kind of begin the conversation with them surrounding the fact that this is really needs to be, you need to consider this, it may not be something that you do immediately, but you do need to, So for example, a group of us are actually going to be meeting with NAFDAC in Nigeria in August, but this medicines control agencies really need to be very proactive in protecting their populations in this area.
Definitely. And so with our interactions with the Ministry of Health, we have been in touch with different groups, either directly or indirectly through the Ministry of Health. So Jennifer, the president of BVGH, has spoken with NAFDAC. Through our contacts at the Ministry of Health in Kenya. They're talking with the Poisons Control Board, I think called. So we definitely are working with them. We're not really focused on the policy side of things. We're really leveraging the strategy and the priorities of the Ministries of Health. But that being said, the Ministries of Health have really emphasized that they want to conduct clinical trials on current standards of care to, as you said, really verify that these treatments are actually efficacious and safe in the populations within their country. And so that's definitely a core component of AC3T, especially that AC3T study pool, where we want hospitals to really conduct these clinical trials on current standards of care, on the drugs that they are already giving to patients, to build up that set of evidence to demonstrate that these drugs are actually doing what they should be doing.
That's outstanding. I'm going to yield to other questions.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. Hello, my name is Dola. I have one of the questions. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah. First, I want to commend you for this initiative. It's a very good one, and for this very, very brilliant presentation. I am the managing partner of a contract research organization in Nigeria, based out of Nigeria. And of course, our role in clinical trials are obvious: site assessment, training on GCPs, regulatory approvals, logistics supports, monitoring, and generally project managing clinical trials. And I see quite a bit of role for us in this your initiative. The question I want to ask is, do you feel a need for the kind of service we provide, and what kind of opportunities are there for us to collaborate with you?
Yeah, I think it really depends on the particulars of the hospitals as well as your capabilities. So I think there's definitely a role. We do try to be conscious of costs. A lot of different fellowships and workshops that we are conducting are costs are very much taken into account, and so we work with either the Ministry of Health or external partners that can help us cover the costs. So we'd be really happy to speak with you and learn more about what your interests are and see where we can have.
Yeah, for one reason or the other, your volume is going down. Could we have everybody mute their mic when you're not talking? Could you repeat what you just said, Katie? I'm sorry. But
yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, so it's very nice to meet you, and I would definitely be interested in speaking more with you. We do there is definitely a potential for a role in what the particular needs of our different hospitals are and what gaps they want filled. And then I also mentioned that we really do keep costs in mind, and so we would want to just learn a little bit more about what sort of cost structures are, because we tend to work with partners that are volunteering their time. So example, MSD, they are placing 3 of their clinical trials fellows in Kenya pro bono to do that training. But all that being said, I'd really be interested in speaking with you more. And as you can see, my email address is still up on the screen, so I'd be pleased to talk with you offline about that.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I'll reach out to you by email, and we'll take the conversation forward.
Perfect. Thank you.
Hi, it's Adama Ibrahim here. I've got a question for you. I'm really, really excited about your presentation. Thank you so much. Lots of valuable information. So just to quickly introduce myself, I work with Professor Folakemi actually on a new initiative. We've recently founded a nonprofit called Emerging Markets Quality Trials, and is to actually advance clinical trials in Africa. It's so compatible to what you're doing. And what is interesting about us is we are a group that are really heavily from the pharma industry. So I work for an American biotech. We have representatives from a Swiss company, a Belgian company, and a UK company, without telling you all the names. But you will see our information, which will be public in a week or two. And what I really wanted to understand from you is exactly what the nice gentleman Shola just mentioned. Is it really is important for us to collaborate. I think the effort we need to put in to drive forward these types of initiatives in our African region it requires a level of collaboration. So I really want to request from everyone, but yourself especially, that we should find ways that we can work together. So our organization is looking at all trials, at all disease areas, and we're specifically looking at technology. So we want to bring innovative technology into trials. We don't want to do things the way everybody's doing it, because Africa is special. We want to make sure we bring the best to Africa. And that means that we will bring artificial intelligence, we will bring blockchain technology, we will bring telemedicine, and we will invite startup companies, technology companies to come and do, their pilots, to come and do their proof of concepts, because we have the population, we have a high intellectual property with very skilled researchers, and we have the will. The regulators have the will. So it's now time, I think, for us to start thinking of how we can combine these forces. How do we, really help each other, especially? You've got this amazing needs assessment questionnaire. We've got a lot of technology backing and pharma input. And Shola, you've got the local knowledge, so you know what the terrain is like. And many, many more people are experts in healthcare and understanding patient population and disease. So what are your thoughts about this? How do you think we can form these really lovely collaborations?
Oh yeah, we 100% agree. We're not trying to recreate the wheel. We recognize that there are different groups doing different capacity building or programs. And so what we're really doing is working with partners to take advantage of the programs that they already have in place. So I had mentioned that we're working on a pathology, a diagnostic pathology laboratory workshop. And that's just, we're not developing a new program or a new organization. We're working with the groups that are already doing these sort of workshops and just saying, hey, we have these hospitals or this hospital that really has this specific need. Can you help us fill that need? So yeah, we don't want to create projects de novo if there are other groups that are already doing these sorts of activities, because it's just going to cause a lot of duplication and just overlap of work that's going to not only cause confusion, but of course is going to be not efficient from a time as well as a financial standpoint. So I would say, yeah, we are very, very interested in collaborating and seeing how we can leverage each other's skills as well as programs to make sure that we're doing a really a holistic approach, as well as I think the right and the pragmatic approach to this. So definitely.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just coming back from and I'm getting the tail end of the I hope just to say hi.
Hi, it's very nice to see you.
Yeah.
I hope you'll be able to speak with us on Monday, but if not, we should probably have another phone call sometime.
Okay, that would be fine.
Perfect.
Hey, Obi.
Hey, Folake, where are you?
I'm back in US.
Wonderful. We're just crisscrossing, doing good work. Yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions? I don't want to monopolize it. Do we have any other questions, especially from clinicians?
I just missed my network was not missed the beginning of the.
Sorry, I can't.
That sounds like Ifoma.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's me.
Ify,
Hi.
okay, go ahead, Ify. Go ahead.
Yeah, I missed most of the beginning because my network was playing up. But I've been working with Jennifer. I just noticed that it's from the same organization, GH, right, Graf? Hello?
Yes, it's the same. Yeah, it's the same.
Okay, all right. So I actually connected with her about a couple of years ago. And it's quite interesting. She's done quite a lot of work in Nigeria to advance oncology management. And Folake, she's the one that did that study that looks at what is available in the different institutions we were discussing the other day. They did a kind of mapping of available facilities in different institutions. Yeah.
Yes.
So collaboration is very key, as Adama has said, and I believe that we have a number of events that are coming up in this year and next year as well. The Africa Clinical Trial Consortium is planning to have something with the new initiative that Adama talked about together in a 2-day event. And we are hoping that we'll be able to make the announcement to taking place. So the collaboration is getting very interesting. We are all part of CAP TC. And now this tying up with BVG GH will be quite a big consortium of efforts. We are happy with what is happening across Africa now on clinical trials. The interest is increasing and different groups are showing up. It's just to synergize our efforts. That is what is left now.
Well said, Ifeoma. Well said. I saw Dr. Farouk. Dr. Farouk, did you have a question?
Yes, Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
So I just want to thank Dr. Katie Griff for this wonderful presentation. My question actually goes to Dr. Katie. I just want to inform you that in our center in Zaria, we actually see more than 1,000 new cancer cases every year. And I can assure you that we don't have anything like any clinical trial program going on presently. So we are actually looking forward to see if we can be able to have a collaboration with your company in the future that will address this gap in our institution.
That would be great. That would be great. I believe, so you're at the University of Nigeria in Zaria, is that?
Amadi Bello.
Yeah, okay.
Bello University Teaching Hospital.
Okay. Great, yes. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's one of our hospitals we're working with in Nigeria. And yeah, I encourage you to please send me an email so I have your contact information, because we will be sending out information about the clinical trials over the next week or so, or 2 weeks, with the especially about the study pool. And so it'd be great to be able to share that with you, and then you can of course share that with your colleagues.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. It's very nice to meet you.
Thank you very much.
Get ready to get a lot of emails, Kathy. Any other questions?
So can I ask this last question, please? Does it mean that if a center is interested in participating, you send an email to that effect? Because as I said, I came in quite late. I came in during the question time.
So we will be sending out information about the study pool and the RFI that we have going out to all of our contacts across our AAI hospitals, but we'll also be leveraging our partners and asking them to send out the RFI to their groups. Because again, we're not only focusing on the 32 hospitals across the 5 countries we're working in. And so we're encouraging EDCPC and everyone on this call here. We want to really get the word out. So we'll be tweeting it. We'll be putting it out on our newsletter that goes out to about 1,500 to 2,000 individuals. And we hope that folks will also share the newsletter. So, we definitely appreciate and encourage everyone on this call to send me an email so that you can be added to our distribution list, but also to when we do share things, to then share that with your colleagues as well.
Yeah, that would be great. Kim, could you please make sure that you also register the CAPTC email on there so that CAPTC email can get it and then you can forward it to our members?
Yes, sure. Of course. And for everyone on the phone, Dr. Graves' email is kgraef@bvgh.org.
Yeah. And Katie, before you go, so we are just wrapping up the IRB approval for the assessment form that we are sending out. I think I would love to send it to you and see whether there's anything that may be missing based on what you have, because we might be able to tap at some people that you don't get, and that way we will be able to actually have a pool of data that is unique and can be used.
For sure, definitely, yes. Please, please, I would love to look at that. Yes.
Yeah. So Nisa, are you on? Kim, if Nisa is on, could you get Nisa to send the latest?
Hello, I'm on.
Okay, great. Nisa, could you please forward the latest clinical trials survey that we have?
Yes.
So that Katie can help us, see whether there's anything that they have that we don't have, and then we'll be able to get it to them once we get our data.
Yes. Hold on.
So I think it's 11 o'clock exactly. So Kim, do you want to do your thanks and wrap up? And I've been getting text and email about her presentation slides. So I'm not sure whether she can share or not, but go ahead. Over to you, Kim.
Sure. So if Dr. Grafe, if you would not mind, we actually are looking to set up a YouTube channel to publish the video since this was a recorded meeting. So if with your permission, hopefully you can disseminate the information to an even broader audience. But again, just want to thank you so much for taking the time to do your presentation today. And thank you for everyone for listening. And again, if you have any questions, Katie's put her email up on the screen, which is still showing. So feel free to either direct an email to her, or if you have our CapTC email, we're answering questions there as well. So thanks everyone, and we'll see you next week, same time for our 8th presentation. And then the final one will be August 10th. So thank you everyone.
Thank you so much. Awesome presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice weekend. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Katie.